Welcome to Homeschool Conversations with Humility and Doxology, a series of interviews with real-life homeschool moms, dads, and other educators. I'm Amy Sloan, a second-generation homeschooling mom of 5, and I'm so glad that you are here with us today. And today we get a chance to talk with Jessica Waldock. Jessica, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
Well, Jessica is a recovering Type A writer, photographer, and homeschool advocate. She is passionate about books, games, checklists, and all things Disney. It must have something to do with being in Florida.
Just a little.
Yeah, maybe. She's the founder of the popular blog, The Waldock Way, and author of best-selling curricula such as Passport to Adventures and Waldock's Wizards and Wands. She lives in Florida with her amazingly talented husband and super creative daughter, and no day is ever the same for their family, and she wouldn't have it any other way. That sounds like such a delightful introduction, and I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit about your family. I mean, I know I just mentioned a little in the bio, and how you came to homeschooling.
So it's just the three of us, and we actually came to homeschooling because I had a really, really difficult pregnancy, and I wasn't ready to let go. If I'm being 100% honest, that's the truth. But I used the excuse that because we lived in the middle of nowhere, we're an hour from civilization, and so it was just made no sense for me to drive an hour, to drop her off at preschool for an hour or two and then drive all the way home. So we decided we might as well just keep her home from preschool. So that's what we did. We kept her home from preschool. I talked my husband into it's ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It cannot be that difficult. Anybody can do it. And then the lifestyle that we experience, the things that because we do everything together as a family, especially since there's just 3 of us. I mean, even the smallest things like poetry tea time always kind of need all of us to make sense. So the lifestyle that homeschooling afforded us, being able to, deep dive into topics together and go on field trips together, it just was something that we weren't ready to let go of. And so we just kept going. And we always have said, we'll take it year by year. But honestly, I don't see anything different in our future.
Yeah, well, as someone who has, I'm a second generation homeschooler, and I just am so thankful for that experience. So yeah, in our family too, it's just sort of part of what makes our family our family. Just fun.
Yeah, it's just kind of part of life. You just do life together.
Exactly. Well, so you said that it was sort of a bit of a sneaky, backhanded way of starting homeschooling, a little bit like, it's too far for preschool, but now you've grown to love this lifestyle that's developed. So how would you describe your homeschooling philosophy or personality, and how has it changed in these first few years? Because your daughter is now 7, is that right?
Yeah, she'll be 8 next month. So she'll be going into 3rd grade. Well, in preschool, we were very traditional because I didn't know anything different. Unlike you, I was not homeschooled. So I went to public school my whole career, or my whole, school career. So did my husband. So it was very, I'm sitting in our schoolroom right now and I'm looking around remembering, I even bought little desks, thinking that we were going to sit at the desk and we were going to do school, which was so funny because it's the opposite of what we do now. And I'm glad for that. But we were very traditional in the beginning because I didn't know anything else. We slowly moved away from the desks, and we've slowly moved to what I call a very relaxed, we just kind of live a lifestyle of learning. So we don't have a start time. We don't have a stop time. We don't have days of the week. We just it weaves into every part of our life, cooking dinner with us in the evening, going to someplace as a family vacation that turns, into a field trip, all of those things that just kind of is the lifestyle we live. So we have a very relaxed homeschool. We are not, I guess eclectic. If I had to pick a method, I would say unit study probably resonates with us the most.
Okay. And you talk a lot about interest-led learning. And I guess I would love to hear a little bit about what that has looked like, especially because your daughter is, has been young in her homeschool years. So what does interest-led learning looked like in your homeschool?
It started as probably when Emily was 5 or 6, and she came to me with her little hands on her hips and was like, "Mommy, don't you think it would be fun to do Jack and Annie School?" which was the Magic Tree House. And I was like, "Oh, maybe." And that kind of is how Passport to Adventures came to be. is she wanted to do School with Jack and Annie, and I looked through the books and I thought, oh, I can totally do this. We can really do Jack and Annie School. So the majority of the things that I have for sale have been really Emily led. Like 99% of it has been her saying, I want to learn more about this. I want to do, I want to do more of this. I want to spend a year at Hogwarts. All of those things have been, driven by her passions. Right now, for about the past year, while she enjoys learning about other things, she is like die hard convinced that she's going to be a veterinarian when she grows up. And I definitely believe she's going to work with animals. I'm not sure that vet is where she'll end up, but she's definitely going to work with animals. So that is something that even when we're not like studying it per se, it's always weaved into our lives. I mean, over dinner, we watch animal documentaries. She takes classes on Outschool about veterinarian. Like she's taking one soon that's intermediate veterinarian, where she just gets to kind of chat with a veterinarian through Outschool and get more information about that. And sometimes it looks like, I always use the analogy that interest-led learning is one of two ways in our households. It's either me kind of laying things out before her that I think would interest her and her, picking them up. So like me walking the dog per se, not that I'm calling my child a dog, or it's her dragging me full force because she's so gung-ho into something that, I'm being drugged at the other end of the leash. So it kind of goes both ways, but it works either way.
That sounds like you've had so many adventures together and really paying attention to what she loves. And I love what you said about being able to weave this sort of love of animals through all the different areas that you study and just part of your life as a family. I think that's one of the fun things about homeschooling. Even those of us who take a different approach to our homeschool philosophy, we can take something that's important to our children and really find a way to interweave that in whatever subject or topic we're studying. And I think that's really fun. It makes the children more engaged.
It does. It does. And I think that is fantastic to point that out. Like, you don't have to be a relaxed homeschooler to still follow your child's interests. You can be any method, and you can use things like strewing or, documentaries that you just watch together as a family, or subscription boxes. Like there's a few out there if your kid really loves something specific. Like there's ways you can weave in following your child's interest without having to be, specifically interest-led or a relaxed homeschooler. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah. In fact, a few years ago, so we're classical homeschoolers, and my son had a big 40-hour project at the end of his humanities course that he needed to do. And he was also at the time really fascinated by Minecraft and was just deep diving in all his free time, like getting all the books from the library about Minecraft and all this. And so he found a way to do this project where he was researching the history of castles and the different types of castles. Like he was getting like college lectures. So his depth of learning about castles was very high. And yet instead of writing a paper or something like that, traditional, like I'll just write a research paper, he did replicas in Minecraft of all the different types of castles and was able to then lead us on a tour of the castles and talk about what he had learned. So
isn't that awesome? So Emily actually has built recently, we did probably actually a few months ago, we were at Disney World, and one of the people, she was upset about something, I don't remember what it was, and one of the cast members came up to her and said like, oh, would you want to get in the front or the back of the roller coaster? And we were in line, and it struck Emily kind of like off guard because she wasn't ready to be given that option. And so my husband assists by saying, or maybe it was anyway, somebody says, it's faster in the back. And so we get on the roller coaster, and of course her wheels are turning the whole time we get off. And she's like, wait a minute, how can it be faster in the back? It would run over the front. So that led down to all of a sudden we're riding all the roller coasters in the front and the back. And then we did, like the whole physics study after we learned that. And Emily built tons of different roller coasters in Minecraft to test the theories of like versus how high they were, how low. It was ridiculously crazy. And I was like, how cool is that? Number one, that those kinds of things exist for our kids, and that we have the ability to be able to let that count instead of having to write, the long research paper or whatever, that they can do something super fun that they're interested in, And it can still count. Like, how awesome is that?
Yeah, and they haven't lost that curiosity. Like, I'm going to ask a question, and instead of us being like, well, that's interesting, but we have this stuff we got to do, we can like, I don't know, let's go see and find out. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to hear from you some of your favorite things about homeschooling an only child, and then if there are any particular challenges that you have faced.
Probably one of my favorite things about homeschooling an only child is the time that we get to spend together, the quality time. Like I said, I had a really difficult pregnancy, which is a big part of the reason why she is an only child. And so she's kind of like my rainbow kid. And so knowing that I get to spend all that extra time with her and not have to split it between other kids or other things or other obligations has just been really awesome for me. Like, I know at the end of 18 years that I got everything I could possibly get out of being her mom. Another thing that I absolutely love about homeschooling only is we were talking about interest-led. When you only have one, it's really easy to do interest-led because I'm only looking at one kid in front of me. So really almost everything we do is interest-led, right? I mean, we have that ability anyway. I would say probably a few of the biggest cons to homeschooling and only are the stigma of it. It's getting better. It's getting a lot better. Over the past couple years, there's become a lot more, homeschooling and only people kind of speaking out and coming to be more public. But when I first started, there was like this stigma, like, you're homeschooling and you only have one kid. Like, that's not heard of. You're not allowed to do that. And then the guilt that I felt over because of that, like I didn't feel like I could because all these people said I couldn't, which is totally not the case. You can totally homeschool and only, and you can be super successful at it. And when people ask you about socialization, you can just tell them, to mind their own business nicely. But honestly, probably the number one real con to it after you get over the stigma of it is that you don't have as much alone time. So not that a mom of many has alone time, but when you have just an only and you're homeschooling, most of the onlys, in my opinion, specifically mine, expect you to be on for them for everything because you're their playmate. If they want to play a game, if they want to do anything, you're the only person they have. So from the time her eyes open till the time her eyes shut, somebody has to be there doing those things, and it's me. So one thing that we found that combats that is that we take lunches away from each other, and not necessarily away from each other, but unplugged from each other. So we will watch a TV show together, listen to an audiobook, listen to a podcast. Sometimes I put, earbuds in and listen to my own thing while she's listening to her own thing. But it gives us a chance to not be like plugged into each other and just kind of have a little bit of time to ourselves. And that sets me up to be able to get through the rest of the day. And I don't necessarily know that that's an only thing, but it's definitely something that's helped me as a mom of an only who's homeschooling and home, with one child that expects you to be on all day long.
Yeah. And that's so smart to have like a set time. So just for expectations, I think so much of parenting, which like the hardest part of homeschooling is parenting. So much of it is just managing expectations, both our children's expectations and our expectations. So if everyone can kind of be on the same page and know, all right, at this time, this is the way we're going to, to kind of give each other a little space, then it seems like that would add a little piece. It's not like out of the blue.
Yeah, it definitely helps us get through the afternoons. We were having kind of rough afternoons. It was like we would hit that slump. And then by the time my husband got home, he was more of a referee. Not in a horrible way, but, and it just wasn't enjoyable for him. And I'm like, okay, we have to find a way to make it so that when he's walking through the door, he's greeted with what he deserves, which is like the, hey, how was your day? And not the, oh my gosh, can you take her from me? Which is okay, but I mean, not every single day. And the way that worked was to just kind of take our separate times at lunches. So if you have to use a screen, don't feel guilty. It's totally okay. You have my permission.
Thank you. I appreciate that because we do. Well, changing gears a little bit, I'm going to get kicked out of the cool club for this admission. And I know I've already shocked you. So hopefully you can, be prepared for this question. But I'm not actually a huge game playing mom. I know they have value and I do play them with my children because I love my children. But they're not personally very fun for me. I would never like choose to play a game on my own time. But you are this amazing game schooling mom, and you talk about it a lot. So I would love to hear from you. Like, did you grow up, or did you already love playing games? Is it something that you just started doing with your daughter and found a love for it? What do you see as the value of game schooling? And help us mamas out who maybe aren't such big game playing fans.
I think not that I grew up playing a ton of games, but I did. Some of my fondest memories growing up were both of my grandmothers had very distinct. I had one that taught me how to play Yahtzee, and we played Yahtzee all the time. I had another that taught me how to play Rummy Cube, and we played Rummy Cube all the time. Anytime we would get together with like our entire family, we would play Phase 10. So a lot of my fondest childhood memories relate to games, even though we weren't necessarily playing games a lot. Like, it's not like we had a game night every Friday night, but a lot of my favorite memories have games involved in them. And so even when me and my husband got married, before we had kids, we would play, a round of Yahtzee or Uno or something like that. Very traditional. I mean, I didn't know about all the games I know about now, obviously. But we would play, 1 or 2 rounds before bed, like as a way to cool down and spend some time together and talk about our day while we were played. So when Emily got, to about 4 or 5, and we played, Hungry Hungry Hippos and Candyland and all that stuff, which you don't have to play that. Like, it's okay not to like those. Those are not my favorite either. Those were kind of torture. But when she hit about 5 and she learned to play Yahtzee, because I was like, that's Kevin's favorite, and he's like, we're going to teach her how to play. So we had to do the math for her, but she could roll the dice and, help write the numbers. And that Christmas, I will never forget. I was in college full time and trying to homeschool kindergarten, and it was a lot on my plate, a lot. And Kevin said, my husband, you should just take the holiday season off of homeschooling. Like, I had finals coming up, and then, Christmas, which in itself is a crazy time. So I took off, I think right after Thanksgiving until after the New Year. He said, just mentally say you're not going to do it. Give yourself that break, which doesn't mean that you don't still read books and play games. We just weren't going to do school. And we played Yahtzee, but she had been struggling the whole first half of kindergarten with her math facts. Like, she could not retain them. All of a sudden, we came back in January, and all of those math facts that she couldn't retain, she knew. And I was blown away. And I was like, how on earth we didn't do school for 6 weeks? But it was because we had played Yahtzee like 3 or 4 times a week as a family. And that's when I knew. I didn't know game school or how we were going to do it, but I saw the value in games. And I knew that that was something I wanted in our homeschool. And I stumbled upon Kate from My Little Poppies and her game school group. And then I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot more games out there than I thought.
It's a whole world.
Yeah, that July for Emily's birthday, I think like everybody on her wish list, it was like nothing but games. Like, everybody's getting her games for her birthday. And her love language is quality time. Like, that is her thing. So games do that in an amazing way. Like, I can sit down and play 1 or 2 games with her, and that fills her up in such an amazing way that it's kind of a win-win. We're doing school, we're learning, she's getting her bucket filled up. So even if I didn't like them, which thank goodness I do, I would still probably play them because it's such an important thing for her learning and for her bucket filling. Even if I didn't like them, I probably wouldn't play them as much though. So if you're getting started game schooling, I would obviously say to visit Kate from My Little Poppies. I have a ton of blog posts too about adding them to your day. I'm trying not to feel overwhelmed. There's so many fantastic ones out there that I've been trying really hard to write a blog post for every school year and limit myself to only 15, like the best 15. Wow. Which is really hard. I'm not going to tell you the sleep I have lost over narrowing it down. So I'm working on that. And then if you really don't like games, you could invest in some single player games that would give your children the same strategy, the same benefits of game playing. Not for every time, but you could work that in so that you were having to play a few less games with them. They'd still be getting the fantastic benefits, but you wouldn't have to play as much. But I'm not telling you to do something you hate, Amy, but I think sometimes you might just have to suck it up and play a game.
And that is exactly what I do. I actually have a daughter for whom playing games is like the thing she wants to do for quality time. So for relationship with her, a lot of times we'll even put it on the schedule, kind of back to like expectations, because some nights I'm just not in a good place to play a game. I'm tired. The younger kids have gone to bed or whatever. So it helps us if we're like, all right, this is going to be our night to play a game together, or during the day when I'm not as tired, it's better. But yeah, it's really important, especially I've seen different children just gravitate towards it more than others. And then one thing that's actually been great in our family, since we had we have a large range of ages and skill levels, and it can be really tough when like the older siblings are always winning and the younger siblings can never really play. And so cooperative games have been a really great thing to incorporate, especially with the younger three.
We played a lot of cooperative games from about 4, probably until about 6.5 to like early 7, because she was in that wanting to win, needing to win, maybe even borderline would probably cheat to win. And we are not the kind of parents that are like just going to let her win. So we switched over to a lot of cooperative too, because it was just easier. And some games are difficult like you said, with age gaps even as a parent, to kind of put yourself down at their level. I mean, if you're playing a sight word game, all of them. It makes it difficult sometimes, to remember that, oh, I have to mess up every now and then, just so they don't feel like that. So cooperative games are great for big age gaps or to level the playing field.
Yeah. And there are even cooperative games now. We got my son one for like older teens and older kids and adults. So that was fun too. So yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on this weakness I have.
I'm going to shift you over to the game side if it's the last thing I do.
Well, let me ask you about your family's morning time, because I know that you write a lot about your morning time and what's in your morning basket, and that's a huge part of our family's homeschool and one of our favorite parts of the day. And I'm really curious to hear about what morning time looks like for you and how you decided to start doing it. Because one of the main reasons I love it in our family is this sort of shared family culture. Again, because I have kids who then go off in so many different directions, it's one time of day where we all come together and we like share those memories and share those like same poems that we're memorizing together. But I know your morning time is going to look different than mine. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
So actually, for a long time, I didn't think I could do morning time because of only having one. Because a lot of what you see and read and hear is like, that's your group subjects, that's your family subjects. And I'm like, well, everything is a family subject for us. It's just the two of us. So when I first found it, I thought it was such a novel idea, but it was difficult because I thought, well, none of this applies to me. Not in the majority of it. A lot of it didn't apply to me. And so we tweaked, and really what it first started out as for us was just me having a place to put all of the things I wanted to do when I wasn't awake, because I'm not a morning person, I'm a night owl. So I need like my caffeine, and even then I need an hour or two. So it just kind of started as, I don't even think I started with a basket. I think it was just like a stack of a few books that I thought, okay, this is what we're going to do tomorrow morning when we wake up. And it wasn't pre-thought out any further than that. Like, tomorrow, these are the books we're going to read and this is the game we're going to play. And it just kind of started as a stack of stuff. Like for me to be able to just reach over, half asleep, pull something for us to do. And then it slowly grew. And as her interests have grown, and this actually is a question that's asked a lot in the morning basket group that I have, is we do themed morning baskets. And I know as a classical homeschooler, that's not what you do. But Emily is quirky and she's an intense kid. So when we tried to do what I'm going to call, for all intents and purposes, a more traditional morning basket, similar to what you would do, we would start with, let's say, like a picture study, and I'd hold up something, we talk about it. And next thing we knew, we were down this huge deep dive about the artist and the painting, which is great. But that was happening every single morning, every single time we would try. And I'm like, this isn't really going to work. because we weren't really long term, we weren't getting anywhere. And so it just makes it easier if I have every resource to cover a topic in the basket. And then we can, no matter what we're doing, we're still staying on that topic, and she's still able to kind of get that deep dive and that intensity that she craves for her personality. And I can make sure we're hitting things like reading aloud, maybe doing Mad Libs, trivia. She really likes trivia, so I can put that in there. Playing a game together, just some of the things I want to touch on. And it also helps us kind of lay a really great foundation for our day. That's what Morning Basket does for us. It helps us connect first thing in the morning, because she's a morning person and I'm not. So it helps me be able to meet her where she is without too much effort, because it's all kind of already there for me. And it helps, again, fill her bucket, lay the foundation for our day. And if that's all we get to that day, it helps me check off that homeschool box. And the really great thing about Morning Basket for us is that even if that's the only thing we get done, I can feel accomplished as a homeschool mom, because I know that we've done some sort of read aloud, probably math or language arts with Mad Libs or bedtime math, depending what's in that specific basket. We've probably played a game. I mean, there's things that I can check off that are in there that I'm like, okay, we had a successful homeschool day. Even if that's all we do and the rest of our day, is just complete chaos.
I am so encouraged to hear that, because one of the things I think that sometimes can get overlooked in people talking about morning time or morning basket, and one of the reasons why I love Pam Barnhill so much is, she's always telling, like, there's not just one right way to do a morning basket. Like, this isn't some list where everybody has to follow the same 5 checkpoints or something. And I love to be able to hear how different families have found ways to really make it work for you.
Yeah, Pam is actually the person who encouraged me. I think it was maybe one of her live videos on Facebook I caught, like, by sheer chance. And she said what she always says, grab a basket, throw a few things in it, start small, build slow. And that has been that's obviously what I tell everybody when they come into the group. I'm like, go check out Pam and her book. And I mean, she's kind of like the queen of it. But that's also why I started a Morning Basket group on Facebook, was because there wasn't anything besides her resources, which were amazing, but there was no place for people to come and see, all the different ways it could be done. And some people, I think, are visual and need to see it. They need to see that there's just so many different ways for different ages, different family dynamics, different things you can put in it, different resources that who knew were even out there. So it's just, I don't know, it's just been really, really fun. It really does change our entire homeschool feeling. Like, if we miss it or we don't hit it for some reason, like say we're leaving the house that day, everything just kind of feels off. It's like we didn't have that connection first thing in the morning. It's almost like not drinking your coffee, like something's just off the whole rest of the day.
Okay, I'm going to have to make like a quotable, like, morning time, the coffee for your homeschool day.
Yes. It really is, though, isn't it? It's like that pick-me-up that you need. Like, if we don't get our morning basket done, I feel like we're like chasing our tails the whole rest of the day. Like, we can't get caught up.
Yeah. Oh, I totally relate to that. In fact, the kids were asking me, they were like, well, what are we going to do for morning time this summer? So I get kind of bored. Like, after a few months, I got to change everything up and do something different in our morning, put different stuff in the morning basket. So I'm going to have to come up with a fun summer plan. So that'll be fun.
Emily, okay, so next week, it may not be next week by the time this is actually going out, but the first week of June, Emily has already planned our summer morning basket. And like, she totally did the whole, I was like, you know what? It's summer. It's your summer. So she totally picked it, and she picked Marvel Avengers superheroes, because she said, and I quote, she wanted to have a marvelously super summer.
I love that.
I thought, we're stuck home right now anyway, so you've got it, baby girl. If that's what you want, that's what we're doing.
That sounds amazing. Well, Jessica, where can people find you online?
I am on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook as The Waldock Way. And then I have a website, which is just thewaldockway.com.
Okay, fabulous. And I will link up to that and some of the things that we've talked about today in the show notes for this conversation, which will be over at humilityanddoxology.com. Thanks so much for chatting with me today. This was really fun.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. It was a blast.